Get out of my way, little girl. The shove came hard and fast. Detective Marcus Cole's palm connected with her shoulder, sending her stumbling backward. Coffee exploded across the floor. 40 FBI agents watched in stunned silence as he laughed loud and mocking, pointing at the young woman in the oversized hoodie. He had no idea. None of them did. What happened next at the FBI's Los Angeles field office on that October morning would destroy a 20-year career in less than 60 seconds. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story moves you, subscribe now, because what's coming will stay with you forever. The laugh echoed through the operations room like a gunshot. Detective Marcus Cole stood in the center of the FBI's Joint Task Force headquarters, his chest puffed out, his badge catching the fluorescent light. He was a big man, 6'2", 230 pounds of muscle wrapped in an expensive suit that screamed promotion. His silver hair was slicked back with precision. His jaw was square and hard. Everything about him announced authority, and right now that authority was aimed directly at the young woman picking herself up from the floor. Did you see that? Cole turned to his team of LAPD detectives, gesturing at her with theatrical disgust. She actually tried to walk past me, like she belonged here. The young woman didn't respond immediately. She was on one knee, her hand pressed against the cold tile, her oversized UCLA hoodie now stained with coffee. Her long black hair had come loose from its ponytail. She looked exactly like what Cole assumed she was, a college student who had wandered into the wrong building. She was 24 years old. Her name was Maya Chen, and she was about to become the most talked about agent in the Bureau's history. But nobody knew that yet. Hey, Cole snapped his fingers at her like he was summoning a dog. I'm talking to you. You deaf or just stupid? Maya rose slowly. Her movements were controlled, deliberate. The kind of precision that came from years of training that Cole couldn't even begin to imagine. She wiped her hands on her jeans and looked directly at him. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black. They held no fear, no anger. Just a calm, measured assessment that should have warned him. It didn't. I apologize for the confusion, Maya said. Her voice was soft, steady. I'm here for the Operation Blackstone briefing. Cole's laughter came again, sharp and cruel. He looked back at his 4 detectives, shaking his head in disbelief. Did you hear that she's here for Operation Blackstone? He pronounced each word with exaggerated mockery. Sweetheart, do you have any idea what Operation Blackstone is? I do. Really? Cole stepped closer to her, using his height to tower over her 5'3" frame. Then please enlighten us. What exactly do you think you know about a $2 billion federal investigation? Maya tilted her head slightly. I know that you've been chasing the wrong shell company for 3 weeks. I know that the real money is flowing through a subsidiary in the Cayman Islands that your team hasn't identified yet. And I know that if you don't redirect your resources within the next 48 hours, the primary targets will liquidate everything and disappear. The room went quiet. Cole's smirk faltered. Just for a second, just long enough for the nearest FBI agents to notice. Then his face hardened into something uglier. Who told you that? His voice dropped low. Dangerous. Who's been leaking information to interns? I'm not an intern. Then what are you, a journalist? Because if you're press, you just admitted to receiving classified information, and I will personally escort you to a holding cell. Maya took a breath. Patient. Controlled. Detective Cole, I'm asking you to step aside. The briefing starts in 10 minutes and I need to prepare. Cole didn't move. Instead, he stepped even closer, deliberately invading her personal space. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive, overpowering the scent of a man who believed presentation was everything. You need to prepare. He laughed again, turning to his audience. Did everyone hear that this child needs to prepare for our briefing? One of his detectives, a younger man named Reeves, shifted uncomfortably. Something about the woman's composure was wrong. She wasn't reacting the way people usually did when Cole went after them. No trembling, no backing down, no tears, just those steady, unblinking eyes. "Listen to me very carefully," Cole said, dropping his voice to what he thought was an intimidating whisper. "I don't know who your daddy is. I don't know if he's some congressman or some rich donor who thinks his daughter deserves a tour of the FBI. But this is the real world, little girl. This is where grown-ups work, and you are not welcome here." Maya's expression didn't change. "Are you finished?" The question landed like a slap. Cole's face flushed red. Nobody talked to him like that. Not his subordinates, not his colleagues, certainly not some kid in a coffee-stained hoodie who looked like she should be studying for midterms. "Am I finished?" He repeated the words with venom. "No, I'm not finished. I'm just getting started." He turned to the room, his voice rising. He was performing now, feeding off the attention of the 40-plus agents and detectives who had stopped their work to watch. "This is exactly what's wrong with federal law enforcement today," he announced. "We have civilians wandering through secure facilities like it's a shopping mall. We have children interrupting critical operations. We have people who have never worked a real case in their lives, thinking they can lecture experienced investigators about how to do our jobs." He wheeled back to face Maya, pointing his finger directly at her face. "You know how many years I've been doing this? 22 years. 22 years of blood and sweat and sacrifice. I've caught murderers. I've brought down crime syndicates. I've been shot at, stabbed, and nearly killed more times than you've probably been on a date." A few of his detectives chuckled nervously. "And now some little girl walks in off the street and tells me I'm chasing the wrong shell company." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what that is? That's disrespect. That's the kind of entitled know-it-all attitude that's destroying this country." Maya waited. "Well," Cole demanded, "don't you have anything to say for yourself? I have authorization to be here." "Authorization." Cole spat the word like it was poison. "Show me, right now. Show me this authorization that lets you waltz into a federal investigation and start criticizing our work." Maya reached for her backpack, which had fallen during the shove. She moved to unzip it. Cole grabbed her wrist. Hard. His fingers wrapped around her forearm with enough force to bruise. His grip was a message, a physical declaration of dominance that he'd used countless times before. It always worked. It always made people submit. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "Getting my credentials." Maya's voice remained calm. Impossibly calm. "You asked to see them. I don't trust you reaching into that bag. For all I know, you could be pulling out a weapon." "I'm not. How do I know that—" Cole's grip tightened. "How do I know you're not some terrorist who walked past security? How do I know this whole innocent act isn't just a cover?" From across the room, Agent Derek Santos felt his stomach drop. He was 29 years old, 3 years out of Quantico, and he had been watching this confrontation with growing horror. Something was wrong. He knew it the moment the woman had picked herself up off the floor, the way she moved, the way she balanced, the way she'd assessed the room in a single sweeping glance before focusing back on Cole. That wasn't how civilians moved. That was training. High-level training. The kind that cost years and thousands of hours to develop. Santos looked at her wrist, the one Cole wasn't holding. She wore a watch tactical grade, the kind field agents used. Her backpack had reinforced panels. Her shoes, now that he looked closely, weren't ordinary sneakers. They were tactical trainers designed for rapid movement. His heart started pounding. He'd seen her somewhere before. He was certain of it. "But where? Let go of my arm," Maya said quietly. "Or what?" Cole laughed. "You'll call security newsflash, sweetheart. I am security. LAPD Detective 3, Joint Task Force Liaison, and the ranking local law enforcement officer in this building. My word carries weight here. Yours doesn't carry anything. I'm not going to ask again. Then don't. Cole pulled her closer, using his grip on her arm as leverage. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this building right now. You're going to forget you ever came here. And if I ever see your face again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing on federal property. Do you understand me? Maya didn't answer. Instead, something shifted in her expression. It was subtle, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't trained to read faces. But Santos saw it. So did Detective Lisa Park Cole's own partner, who had been watching from the edge of the group with increasing unease. The woman wasn't afraid. She was deciding something. I gave you a chance to walk away from this, Maya said. Her voice had changed. It was lower now, harder. The softness had vanished, replaced by something that made the hair on Santos's neck stand up. A chance, Cole barked a laugh. You're giving me a chance. I was trying to avoid making this official. Official? What are you going to do, file a complaint? He released her arm with a shove. Go ahead, file whatever you want. I've been through a dozen internal investigations. I always come out clean, because I know how the system works, and the system works for people like me. Maya rubbed her wrist where his fingers had left marks. Red impressions that would turn to bruises within the hour. Detective Cole, she said, and something in the way she spoke made several nearby agents unconsciously step back. You just physically assaulted me in front of approximately 40 witnesses. You grabbed me, you shoved me, you made threats. All of this has been recorded on the security cameras positioned in the four corners of this room. Cole's smile flickered. So what? So I'm going to give you one final opportunity to apologize and remove yourself from my path. If you do that, I might be willing to overlook what just happened. Apologize! Cole's voice rose to a shout. You want me to apologize to you? He turned to the room, arms spread wide. Did you all hear that this child wants me to apologize? After she disrespected me. After she walked into my investigation. After she questioned my competence. He spun back to face Maya. Let me tell you something about apologies. I don't give them. Not to criminals, not to politicians, and certainly not to little girls who don't know their place. Santos was moving before he fully realized what he was doing. His legs carried him toward the exit, toward the hallway, where he could make a call without being overheard, because he'd finally remembered where he'd seen her face. 3 weeks ago. A classified briefing. A photograph on a slide that had appeared for less than 5 seconds. The incoming commander for Operation Blackstone. The youngest special agent in charge in Bureau history. Maya Chen. Santos's hands were shaking so badly that he could barely hold his phone. Back in the operations room, Cole was building toward a finale. He'd found his rhythm now, feeding off the silence of the room, interpreting it as agreement. You know what your problem is, he said, stepping toward Maya again. You've never faced consequences. You've probably had everything handed to you your whole life. Good grades, nice schools, parents who told you that you were special. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a hiss. But here's the truth, sweetheart. You're not special. You're nobody. And nobody gets to talk to me the way you just did. Maya held his gaze. Are you finished? I'm finished when I say I'm finished. Because I have a briefing to run and you're wasting my time. But Cole's face contorted with rage. Something snapped behind his eyes, the final restraint that had been holding back his worst impulses. That's it. He grabbed her shoulder again, harder this time, and physically pushed her toward the exit. You're leaving. Right now. I don't care if I have to drag you out myself. Maya didn't stumble this time. She rotated with his push, redirecting his energy, and suddenly she was standing 3 feet away while Cole was off balance, his momentum carrying him forward into empty space. It happened so fast that most of the room didn't even process what they'd witnessed. Cole caught himself against a desk, his face purple with humiliation and fury. Several of his own detectives stared at him with expressions that bordered on disbelief. "What the hell was that?" Cole demanded. Maya adjusted her hoodie calmly. "I'd like you to reconsider your behavior, Detective. This is your last warning." "My last warning?" Cole straightened up, his fists clenching at his sides. "You just assaulted a police officer. That's a felony. I have witnesses. Everyone in this room saw what you did. Everyone in this room saw me step out of the way of your attack. That wasn't stepping out of the way. That was some kind of martial arts move. That was self-defense." Cole's jaw worked silently. He was cornered, and some part of him knew it. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. Not in front of all these people. Not in front of his team. He'd built his entire career on never backing down. "I'm calling security," he announced, reaching for his radio. "I'm having you removed from this building and banned from federal property." "Go ahead." The confidence in her voice should have stopped him. The absolute certainty. The complete lack of fear. It didn't. Cole keyed his radio. "Security, this is Detective Cole at the Joint Operations Center. I have an unauthorized individual who has assaulted a law enforcement officer. I need immediate assistance for removal and detention." The radio crackled. A voice came back, uncertain. "Detective Cole, can you confirm the individual's description? Female Asian, early 20s, wearing jeans and a UCLA hoodie. She's standing right in front of me." A pause. Longer than it should have been. "Detective Cole, stand by. We're checking something." Cole frowned at the radio. "Checking what? I need security here now." "Sir, we're being told to hold all responses to that location. There's been a communication from the assistant director's office." Maya's expression didn't change. But something in her posture relaxed slightly, the tension of waiting releasing just a fraction. Cole noticed. And for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. "What communication?" he demanded into the radio. "What are you talking about? Sir, I'm not authorized to—" "I am a Detective 3 with the Los Angeles Police Department. I am the ranking local law enforcement officer on this task force. I am ordering you to—" The elevator doors opened. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Every head turned. Assistant Director James Thornton stepped out of the elevator. He was 60 years old, silver-haired, built like a former Marine. His suit cost more than most agents made in a week. His face was carved from granite. Behind him walked 2 senior supervisors and an agent that Santos recognized from the director's personal security detail. The room went absolutely still. Thornton's eyes swept the scene. The spilled coffee on the floor. The young woman in the stained hoodie, the red marks visible on her wrist. The detective standing with his radio still raised, his face frozen in an expression of dawning horror. "Agent Chen," Thornton said. The words landed like bombs. Cole's radio clattered to the floor. "My apologies for the delay." Thornton continued walking toward Maya with the measured stride of a man accustomed to commanding armies. "The director's call ran longer than expected." He stopped directly in front of her, and his expression, hard and unreadable, for everyone else, softened just slightly. "I trust there were no problems." Maya glanced at Cole. Just a flicker. Just long enough. "Nothing I couldn't handle, sir." Thornton followed her gaze. His eyes locked onto Cole's face. And what Cole saw there made his knees go weak. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even disappointment. It was the cold, calculated assessment of a man deciding exactly how much someone was about to suffer. "Detective Cole," Thornton said slowly, "is there something you'd like to tell me?" Cole's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Because at that moment Maya reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out her credentials. The badge caught the light. FBI, Special Agent in Charge, Counterintelligence Division. And below that, the security clearance markers that made even Thornton's supervisors take a step back. Cole stared at the badge, then at Maya's face, then at the badge again. His legs gave out. He caught himself on the edge of a desk, but barely. His face had gone from purple to white in less than 3 seconds. His hands were shaking. His entire body was shaking. The room was silent. 43 people stood frozen in place, every single one of them processing the same devastating realization. The little girl that Detective Marcus Cole had shoved, grabbed, threatened, and humiliated was not an intern. She was not a journalist. She was not someone's daughter on a tour. She was Special Agent Maya Chen, the youngest special agent in charge in FBI history, handpicked by the director himself to lead the most important financial crimes investigation on the West Coast. And Cole had just committed career suicide in front of every witness he could possibly have assembled. "Sir," Cole finally managed to croak. His voice was barely a whisper. I had no idea. She wasn't wearing what Detective..." Thornton's voice was ice. "A sign, a uniform. Would you like all senior federal agents to announce themselves when they enter a room, so you know not to assault them?" She looked like a what? Cole couldn't finish the sentence. Thornton stepped closer to him, and despite being 3 inches shorter, he seemed to tower over the detective. "In the past 15 minutes, Thornton said, his voice dropping to a volume that somehow carried even more weight, "you have physically assaulted a federal officer. You have made threats against her safety. You have attempted to file a false report with building security. You have demonstrated exactly the kind of judgment that makes me question whether you should be trusted with any authority whatsoever." Cole's mouth moved. Nothing came out. "Furthermore," Thornton continued, "you did all of this in front of 43 witnesses under 4 separate security cameras, while the agent in question was specifically attempting to give you opportunities to walk away." He glanced at Maya. "How many chances did you give him, Agent Chen?" "3, sir." Maya's voice was calm, professional. "I informed him of my authorization to be here. I asked him to step aside. I offered to overlook the initial incidents if he apologized. And his response, he grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. He pushed me toward the exit, and he attempted to have me detained on false charges." Thornton turned back to Cole. "Anything to add, Detective?" Cole's career was flashing before his eyes. 22 years. 22 years of climbing the ladder, building his reputation, accumulating power. All of it crumbling in real time. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "A mistake?" Thornton's eyebrow raised. "Is that what we're calling it? I thought she was... I didn't know. You didn't know her rank." Thornton nodded slowly. "So your behavior would have been acceptable if she actually was an intern, if she actually was a civilian, if she actually was someone with less power than you?" Cole had no answer, because there was no answer. Maya stepped forward. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the quiet authority that had been hidden beneath her casual appearance. "Detective Cole," she said, "I want you to understand something. In approximately 90 seconds, your captain is going to receive a phone call. That call will inform him that you have been removed from Operation Blackstone, effective immediately. Your access to this facility will be revoked. Your badge and weapon will be confiscated pending a formal investigation." Cole's face crumpled. "However," Maya continued, "what happens after that is not yet decided. You could face criminal charges for assault on a federal officer. You could face departmental termination. You could face the complete destruction of everything you've spent 22 years building. She paused. Let the weight of those words settle. Or, she said quietly, you could face something else. Cole looked up. A desperate hope flickered in his eyes. I'm not here to destroy people, Detective. I'm here to run an investigation. And what I've learned in my career is that destruction is easy. Rebuilding is hard. The question I'm asking myself right now is whether you're capable of being rebuilt. She held his gaze. I don't have an answer yet, but I'm willing to find out. Thornton watched this exchange with an expression that revealed nothing. When Maya finished, he turned to the two supervisors who had accompanied him. Please escort Detective Cole to Conference Room B. Secure his radio and credentials. Contact his captain and inform him that we need a formal disciplinary representative here within the hour. The supervisors moved forward. Cole didn't resist as they guided him toward the door. But before he reached the exit, Maya's voice stopped him. Detective? He turned. I spent this morning running 8 miles on the perimeter trail, she said. I chose to wear comfortable clothes. I chose not to display my credentials. I chose to walk through that door looking exactly like what you assumed I was, a young woman who didn't belong. She let that sink in. I made those choices because I wanted to see how this task force actually operates. I wanted to see how people treat those they perceive as less powerful than themselves. I wanted to know what kind of culture I was inheriting. Her eyes met his. Now I know. The supervisors guided Cole through the door. It closed behind him with a soft click. And in the operations room, 43 people slowly began to breathe again. Maya turned to face them. Her expression was calm, professional. The young woman in the coffee-stained hoodie had transformed before their eyes into something else entirely, a leader whose composure under pressure had just been demonstrated in the most dramatic way possible. The briefing will begin in 15 minutes, she said. I expect everyone involved in Operation Blackstone to be present and prepared. She walked toward the conference room, her stride confident, her bearing unshakable. Behind her, the FBI agents and remaining detectives exchanged looks of shock, disbelief, and something that might have been the beginning of respect, because they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for years. They had just watched a man destroy himself by making the oldest mistake in the book. He had judged a book by its cover, and the book had turned out to be a weapon. The door had barely closed behind Detective Cole when the whispers started. Agent Derek Santos stood frozen near the coffee station, his phone still clutched in his hand. He had been seconds away from calling headquarters when Thornton arrived. Now his legs felt like they'd turned to water. Did that just happen? The voice came from beside him. Agent Rachel Torres, a 10-year veteran, was staring at the conference room door where Maya had disappeared. Did we just watch a 22-year veteran destroy his career in real time? Santos couldn't answer. His throat was too dry. Across the room, the remaining LAPD detectives huddled together like survivors of a shipwreck. Detective Lisa Park Cole's partner of 3 years had gone completely pale. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone. I have to call the captain, she muttered. Before Thornton's people do. He needs to hear this from us first. And tell him what Detective James Reeves, the youngest of Cole's team, looked like he might be sick. That Marcus just assaulted the special agent in charge, that we stood there and watched, that we laughed. I didn't laugh. You didn't stop him either. Park's jaw tightened. Neither did you. The accusation hung in the air between them, because it was true. They had all stood there. They had all watched. Some of them had even found it amusing, the big man putting some random girl in her place, None of them had said a word. "This is bad," Reeves whispered. "This is really, really bad. They're going to want statements. They're going to want to know why we didn't intervene. They're going to—" "Shut up!" Park's voice was sharp. "Just shut up and let me think." But there was nothing to think about. The facts were the facts. The cameras had recorded everything. 43 witnesses had seen everything. And in conference room B, their colleague was probably already being read his rights. Inside the conference room, Maya stood at the head of the long table reviewing documents on a tablet. She hadn't changed out of her stained hoodie, hadn't fixed her hair, hadn't done anything to alter her appearance from the woman Cole had shoved 20 minutes earlier. That was deliberate. Assistant Director Thornton entered behind her and closed the door. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You knew this would happen," Thornton finally said. It wasn't a question. Maya didn't look up from her tablet. "I suspected it might. You walked into a room full of law enforcement officers looking like a lost college student. You gave Cole every opportunity to make exactly the mistake he made. I gave him every opportunity to treat an unfamiliar person with basic respect." Maya set down the tablet. He chose not to. Thornton studied her. He had known Maya Chen for 3 years, had watched her rise through the bureau with a speed that made veteran agents uncomfortable. She was brilliant, methodical, and underneath that calm exterior, she possessed a will of iron. "The director is going to want a full report," he said. "He'll have it by tonight. Cole's captain is already calling. The LAPD commissioner will be involved within the hour. This is going to become political very quickly." Maya finally met his eyes. "Sir, with respect, I didn't create this situation. Cole did. Every choice he made was his own. I simply allowed him to reveal his true character. By presenting yourself as a target. By presenting myself as a young woman. That shouldn't make me a target in a federal building." Thornton was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "No," he agreed. "It shouldn't." He moved toward the door, then paused. "The briefing. You're still planning to proceed. Operation Blackstone won't wait because one detective couldn't control himself. We have 48 hours before the primary targets liquidate. I intend to use every one of them." Thornton allowed himself a small smile. "That's why the director chose you." He left. Maya stood alone in the conference room, her reflection staring back at her from the darkened window. For just a moment, the mask slipped. Her hands trembled slightly. Her jaw tightened. Then she took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and the moment passed. There was work to do. In conference room B, 3 floors below, Detective Marcus Cole sat in a hard plastic chair staring at the wall. His badge sat on the table in front of him. His weapon had been secured in a lockbox. His radio was gone. Everything he had spent 22 years building was gone. The door opened. A woman in a crisp suit entered, followed by a man Cole didn't recognize. They sat across from him, arranging papers and folders with the mechanical precision of people who had done this many times before. "Detective Cole," the woman began. Her voice was neutral, professional. "I'm Agent Sarah Mitchell from the Office of Professional Responsibility. This is Agent David Park from the LA Field Office's Administrative Division. We're here to conduct an initial interview regarding the incident that occurred this morning." Cole's mouth was dry. "I want a lawyer." "You're entitled to legal representation. However, I should inform you that this is currently an administrative inquiry, not a criminal investigation. Anything you say here..." "I know how this works." Cole's voice cracked. "I've been on your side of the table 100 times. I know exactly how this works." Mitchell exchanged a glance with her colleague. "Then you understand the seriousness of your situation." "I understand that I made a mistake." "A mistake." Mitchell opened one of her folders. Detective Cole, in this past 30 minutes, we've reviewed the security footage from the operations room. Would you like to know what we observed? Cole didn't answer. We observed you making initial contact with Agent Chen at approximately 12:47. We observed you using derogatory language including terms like little girl, sweetheart, and child. We observed you physically shoving her with enough force to cause her to lose her balance. We observed you grabbing her arm here. We have a still image that clearly shows the force of your grip. And we observed you attempting to physically remove her from the facility. She slid a photograph across the table. It showed Cole's hand wrapped around Maya's forearm, his fingers digging into her skin. All of this, Mitchell continued, was directed at a federal officer who you had no reason to believe was anything other than an authorized visitor to the facility. Cole stared at the photograph, at his own hand, at the expression on his face twisted with contempt, radiating power and entitlement. He barely recognized himself. I thought she was... He stopped, swallowed. She looked like what, Detective? The question hung in the air. Cole knew there was no good answer. Every response would damn him further. She looked like someone who didn't matter. She looked like someone I could push around. She looked like someone whose opinion didn't count. I made assumptions, he finally said, based on her appearance, based on her age. Assumptions that led you to assault her. I didn't mean to... Detective Cole. Mitchell's voice sharpened. We have 43 witnesses. We have 4 camera angles. We have audio recordings. What you meant to do is irrelevant. What you did is documented beyond any possible dispute. Cole's head dropped into his hands. I'm done, he whispered. Aren't I? This is it. 22 years and this is how it ends. Mitchell didn't offer comfort. That wasn't her job. That depends, she said, on what happens next. Upstairs, the briefing had begun. Maya stood at the front of the operations room, a massive screen behind her, displaying a web of financial connections that most of the agents in the room couldn't begin to untangle. Her hoodie was still stained. Her hair was still loose. But no one in the room saw a college student anymore. They saw something else entirely. Operation Blackstone began 18 months ago, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, when a whistleblower from Pacific Meridian Holdings contacted the SEC with evidence of systematic fraud. What appeared initially to be a localized embezzlement scheme has since expanded into one of the largest financial crimes investigations in Bureau history. She touched the screen, and the display shifted to show a network of shell companies spanning 4 continents. $12 billion, she continued. That's our current estimate of the money that has been funneled through this network over the past 7 years. The primary beneficiaries include 3 Fortune 500 executives, a sitting congressman, and a criminal syndicate with ties to Eastern European organized crime. The room was absolutely silent. Agent Torres leaned over to Santos. She's 24, she whispered. 24 years old, and she's running this... Santos didn't respond. He was watching Maya's face, watching the way she commanded the room without raising her voice, without posturing, without any of the aggressive tactics that Cole had employed. This was real authority, not the borrowed kind, not the kind that came from a badge or a gun, the kind that came from pure, undeniable competence. The reason I'm here, Maya continued, is that our previous approach has hit a wall. Detective Cole was correct about one thing. There's been no significant progress in 3 weeks. He was incorrect about the reason. As she touched the screen again, a new set of companies appeared. Your team has been focused on Westbrook Financial Services, the most visible shell company in the network. It was the obvious target. The trail seemed clear. The evidence seemed compelling. She paused. It was supposed to seem that way. Westbrook is a decoy, a carefully constructed false trail designed to consume resources and attention while the real money moves elsewhere. Murmurs rippled through the room. The actual conduit is a company called Seaview Capital Partners, registered in the Cayman Islands through a nominee director in Singapore. They've been operating in plain sight for 18 months because no one was looking at them. Until now. She brought up a timeline. Transactions. Account numbers. A pattern that suddenly seemed obvious once it was laid out. "We have 48 hours," she said. "After that, our sources indicate the primary targets will begin liquidation. $12 billion will disappear into accounts we'll never trace, held by people we'll never find." Her eyes swept the room. "I was sent here because the director believes this team has the capability to prevent that. I was sent here because despite the obstacles, despite the personality conflicts, despite the territorial disputes that have plagued this investigation from the beginning, there are good agents in this room who want to do their jobs." She paused, letting the words land. "I don't care about your rank. I don't care about your agency. I don't care whether you've been doing this for 2 years or 20. What I care about is whether you're willing to work together for the next 48 hours to accomplish something that matters." She looked at each face in turn. FBI agents, LAPD detectives, support staff, analysts, all of them watching her with an intensity that had nothing to do with her age or her appearance. "Are you—" The silence stretched for 3 seconds. 5. 7. Then Agent Torres stood up. "Yes, ma'am." One by one, others followed, standing, affirming, committing to something larger than their egos or their territorial instincts. Within a minute, the entire room was on its feet. Maya nodded. Just once. Just slightly. "Good. Let's get to work." 3 hours later, Detective Lisa Park sat alone in a small office on the 2nd floor, waiting to give her statement. The door opened, and Agent Mitchell entered. "Detective Park, thank you for your patience." Park nodded. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. "I've been Cole's partner for 3 years," she said before Mitchell could begin. "I've seen him do things like this before. Not this bad, but similar. The way he talks to people he thinks are beneath him. The way he uses his size, his voice, his rank." Mitchell remained silent, letting her continue. "I never said anything." Park's voice was barely audible. "I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself he was a good investigator. I told myself the results mattered more than the methods." She looked up at Mitchell. Her eyes were wet. "I was wrong. I was wrong and I knew it, and I stayed quiet anyway. Because it was easier. Because calling him out would have made my life harder." Mitchell made a note. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because when I watched him shove that woman, when I watched him grab her arm and threaten her, I saw myself. I saw what I've allowed, what I've enabled, and I don't want to be that person anymore." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is a list," she said. "Everyone in our department who's complained about Cole over the years. Complaints that were buried or dismissed or never followed up. I've been keeping track, in case anyone ever actually wanted to know." Mitchell took the paper. Unfolded it. The list was long. "Detective Park," she said slowly, "are you aware of what this document represents?" "Yes." Park's voice steadied. "It represents the end of my partnership with Marcus Cole, and probably the end of my career in the LAPD. That's a significant sacrifice." Park shook her head. "No. What I've been doing for 3 years, looking the other way, pretending not to see, that was the sacrifice. This is just finally doing the right thing." She stood up. "Whatever happens to Cole," she said, "he needs help. Not just punishment. Help. Because the man I saw today isn't someone who suddenly became cruel. He's someone who's been cruel for years, maybe decades, and nobody ever cared enough to stop him." Mitchell watched her walk to the door. "Detective Park." Park turned. "Thank you for the list and for your honesty." Park nodded. Then she was gone. In the operations room, Maya was deep in analysis when Santos approached her desk. He stood awkwardly for a moment, clearly unsure how to address someone who looked his age, but outranked him by a magnitude he couldn't calculate. "Agent Chen." Maya looked up. "Santos, right. You were the one who made the call to headquarters." He blinked. "How did you know that?" "I know everything that happens in my operations." She gestured to the chair beside her. "Sit down. What do you need?" Santos sat. His hands were still shaking slightly. "I just wanted to say, what Cole did was wrong. I should have intervened. I should have said something. I saw what was happening and I just stood there." Maya studied him for a long moment. "How long have you been with the Bureau, Santos?" 3 years. "And in those 3 years, how many times have you seen a senior officer behave inappropriately toward someone they perceived as less powerful?" Santos was quiet. "More than once." "Yes." "And how many times did you intervene?" "Never." The word came out as a whisper. Maya nodded. "That's not unusual. That's institutional culture. When we're taught to respect rank and experience, we sometimes forget that rank and experience don't equal character. We forget that following leaders means nothing if those leaders aren't worth following." She leaned forward slightly. "But here's the thing, Santos. You made that phone call. You didn't stand in front of Cole and challenge him. That would have been career suicide, and we both know it. But you took action. You found a way to address the situation that was within your power." "It wasn't enough. It was more than most people did." She paused. "What matters now is what you do going forward. Do you stay quiet the next time you see something wrong, or do you find the courage to act?" Santos met her eyes. For the first time since the morning, something other than shame flickered in his expression. "I'll act," he said. Maya smiled. "Just slightly, just enough." "Good. Now get back to work. We have 45 hours left, and I need every analyst we have on the Seaview transactions." Santos stood, then hesitated. "Agent Chen, for what it's worth. I'm glad you're running this operation." He walked away before she could respond. Maya watched him go. Then she turned back to her screen, back to the $12 billion that still needed to be found. But for just a moment, something warm flickered behind her eyes. Something that might have been hope. In conference room B, the interview had ended. Cole sat alone, staring at the wall. His future was uncertain. His career was probably over. Everything he had built, everything he had believed about himself lay in ruins around him. But beneath the shock and the shame, something else was stirring. A memory. 22 years old. A young detective fresh out of the academy who had sworn to protect and serve, who had believed in justice, who had wanted to make a difference. When had that man disappeared? When had he become someone who shoved young women in hallways and laughed about it? Cole didn't have an answer. But for the first time in years, he was asking the question. And somewhere deep inside, the faintest ember of something long buried began to glow. 26 hours had passed since Cole's world collapsed. He sat in his apartment alone in the darkness, staring at the badge that lay on his coffee table. They had given it back to him after the initial interview. A formality, a reminder of what he was about to lose. His phone had been ringing all night. His captain, his ex-wife, his brother in San Diego. He hadn't answered any of them. What was there to say? The memory of Maya Chen's eyes haunted him, not angry, Not triumphant, just disappointed. Like she had expected better from him and he had failed to deliver. That was somehow worse than hatred. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked at the screen. A text from Detective Park. "The hearing is tomorrow at 0900. They're bringing in people from Washington. Cole, this is serious. Call me." He didn't call. Instead, he reached for the bottle of whiskey on his end table, then stopped. His hand hovered over the glass. 22 years ago, a young cop had sworn an oath to protect and serve, to uphold the law, to be worthy of the badge. What had happened to that man? Cole let his hand drop. The whiskey remained untouched. For the first time in years, he wanted to remember. Not the victories, not the commendations, not the respect he had accumulated like currency. He wanted to remember who he used to be. At the FBI field office, Maya hadn't slept in 31 hours. The Seaview connection had blown the case wide open. Her team had traced 17 shell companies, frozen 4 offshore accounts, and identified the primary architect of the fraud, a man named Richard Holloway, CEO of Pacific Meridian Holdings, who had been hiding in plain sight for 7 years. But there was a problem. "He's running," Agent Torres said, bursting into Maya's office at 3 a.m. "We just got word from Interpol. Holloway boarded a private jet in Los Angeles 6 hours ago. Flight plan says Mexico City, but our sources indicate he's actually heading to a non-extradition country." Maya's jaw tightened. 6 hours ago, before we froze the accounts. Someone tipped him off. The words hung in the air like poison. Maya stood slowly. Her exhaustion vanished, replaced by something cold and focused. "Who knew about the Seaview analysis?" Torres hesitated. "Everyone in the briefing, plus the LAPD liaison team, plus support staff. That's at least 50 people." "Narrow it down. I want a list of everyone who accessed the case files in the last 24 hours. Cross-reference with anyone who had communication with Pacific Meridian or its subsidiaries." "That could take days." "We have hours." Maya grabbed her phone. "Get Santos. Get Mitchell. I want everyone in the operations room in 15 minutes." Torres nodded and ran. Maya stood alone for a moment, her mind racing through possibilities. A leak. Someone on the inside. Someone who had watched her briefing and immediately sold the information. $12 billion was enough to buy a lot of loyalty. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check Detective Cole's financial records. 3 deposits, March, June, September. You're welcome." Maya stared at the message. Then she called Mitchell. "I need a full forensic audit of Marcus Cole's finances. Every account, every transaction. Going back 5 years. Agent Chen, it's 3 a.m. I know what time it is. Someone tipped off our primary target. Someone in this building. And I just received information suggesting it might be Cole." Silence on the other end. "I'll have it within the hour," Mitchell said. Maya hung up. Her hands were trembling slightly. If Cole was the leak, everything changed. The confrontation in the operations room wouldn't be about harassment anymore. It would be about obstruction of justice, about corruption, about a federal investigation compromised from the inside. And she had been the one who recommended rehabilitation over destruction. The next 2 hours were chaos. Santos pulled the access logs. Torres coordinated with Interpol. Mitchell dug through Cole's financial history with the precision of a surgeon. At 5:17 a.m., Mitchell walked into Maya's office and closed the door. "I found something." Maya looked up. Mitchell's face was pale. 3 deposits, just like the anonymous tip said. $50,000 each. March, June, September. all routed through a subsidiary of Pacific Meridian Holdings. Maya felt the floor shift beneath her feet. He's been on their payroll. It gets worse. Mitchell laid a folder on the desk. The deposits started 18 months ago, right when Operation Blackstone began. Cole was assigned to the task force 2 weeks later. He was their inside man from the beginning. It appears so. Maya stared at the documents, the numbers, the proof of something she hadn't wanted to believe. The confrontation yesterday, she said slowly. When he shoved me, when he tried to have me removed. He wasn't just being territorial. He was trying to protect his operation. If you took over the investigation, if you found the Seaview connection, he'd be exposed. Mitchell nodded. The anonymous tip came from a burner phone. We traced the purchase to a gas station in Pasadena. The buyer paid cash, but there was a security camera. She pulled out a photograph. Maya looked at the image. A woman in her 30s. Dark hair. Professional clothing. Who is she? Her name is Jennifer Holloway, Richard Holloway's wife. The twist hit Maya like a physical blow. She turned on her own husband. It looks that way. We're trying to locate her now, but she's gone dark. My guess is she knew Holloway was about to run and decided to burn everything down on her way out. Maya sat back in her chair. Her mind was reeling. Cole wasn't just a bully who had picked the wrong target. He was a corrupt cop who had been sabotaging a federal investigation for 18 months. And his assault on her hadn't been random aggression. It had been a desperate attempt to maintain control of an operation that was about to collapse. "Where is Cole now?" she asked. "At home. We have surveillance on his apartment. He hasn't left since yesterday evening." "Does he know we're on to him?" "Unknown. But if he's smart, he's already figured out that we're going to look at everything now. The assault charges gave us probable cause to dig into his entire history." Maya stood. Her exhaustion was gone, replaced by cold determination. "Pick him up. Full arrest team. I want him in custody before he has a chance to destroy evidence or contact his handlers." "What about the hearing tomorrow?" "There won't be a hearing. There's going to be an arrest." Mitchell hesitated. "Agent Chen, I have to ask. Are you sure you want to be involved in this, given what happened between you and Cole? There could be accusations of bias, personal vendetta." Maya met her eyes. "This isn't personal, Agent Mitchell. This is about $12 billion and a man who sold out his badge for $150,000. I don't care what he did to me. I care what he did to this investigation." Mitchell nodded slowly. "I'll assemble the team." At 6:23 a.m., Marcus Cole heard the knock on his door. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't moved from this couch where he'd been sitting for hours, turning his badge over and over in his hands. The knock came again. Louder this time. "FBI, open the door." Cole's heart stopped. He knew that voice. He'd heard it before in briefings in hallways in the moments before his world fell apart. He stood slowly. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. When he opened the door, Maya Chen was standing in the hallway. Behind her, a full tactical team in body armor. "Marcus Cole," Maya said, her voice flat and professional. "You are under arrest for bribery, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Cole didn't resist as they cuffed him. Didn't speak as they led him down the stairs. Didn't look at the neighbors who had gathered in the hallway phones, out recording the fall of a man who had once commanded respect. As they reached the street, Cole finally spoke. "I didn't tip off Holloway." Maya stopped walking. She turned to face him. "What? The money. I took it. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. But I never gave them anything. I never passed information. I never sabotaged the investigation." His eyes met hers. And in that moment, Maya saw something she hadn't expected. Truth. If you weren't the leak, she said slowly, then who was? Cole's jaw tightened. Ask yourself who benefits from me taking the fall. Ask yourself who else had access to everything I had access to. Ask yourself who just handed you evidence that conveniently points in one direction. Maya stared at him. Jennifer Holloway. Think bigger. The realization hit her like a train. Someone inside the FBI. Cole nodded slowly. I took their money because I was desperate. Because my ex-wife's medical bills were drowning me and my pension wasn't going to cover it. I'm not proud of it. But I never gave them anything except my silence. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. The leak is still in your building, Agent Chen. And they just used me to make sure you stopped looking. 2 hours later, Maya stood in the operations room surrounded by her team. She had ordered Cole held separately from the general population. She had sealed his interview. She had told no one about their conversation, because if he was telling the truth, then everything she thought she knew was wrong. Santos. She gestured him over. I need you to do something, and I need you to do it quietly. He nodded, his face serious. Run a second analysis of the access logs, but this time exclude Cole. Look for anyone else who accessed the Seaview files before Holloway ran. You think there's another leak? I think we may have been played. Santos's eyes widened. By who? Maya hesitated. The answer was forming in her mind, but it was too terrible to say out loud. Just run the analysis. And Santos, don't tell anyone what you're doing. Not Torres, not Mitchell. No one. He nodded and walked away. Maya stood alone watching her team work, wondering which one of them was a traitor. The answer came at 11:47 a.m. Santos approached her desk with a printout, his hands shaking. I found something, he whispered, but you're not going to like it. Maya took the paper, scanned the data, felt her blood run cold. 3 access points. 3 times someone had downloaded the complete Seaview analysis before it was presented to the team. 3 times using credentials that should have been impossible to trace. But Santos had traced them to Agent Sarah Mitchell. The same agent who had conducted Cole's interview. The same agent who had conveniently found the financial evidence against him. The same agent who had been in the perfect position to control the narrative. Maya looked across the room. Mitchell was at her desk typing on her computer, completely calm. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Mitchell knew. She bolted. The operations room erupted into chaos. Agents shouted. Chairs crashed. Torres dove for the door, trying to cut off Mitchell's escape. But Mitchell had planned for this. She had always planned for this. She reached the stairwell before anyone could stop her. Her footsteps echoed down the concrete shaft, growing fainter with each second. Maya sprinted after her, her heart pounding, her legs burning. 3 flights. 4. 5. She burst through the ground floor door just in time to see Mitchell reaching for a black sedan parked at the curb. Mitchell, stop. Mitchell turned. For a moment, they faced each other across 20 feet of pavement. You should have stayed in the operations room, Mitchell said. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. You should have let Cole take the fall and moved on. Why? Maya demanded. Why would you do this? Because $12 billion buys more than just politicians and cops, Agent Chen. It buys federal agents, too. It buys entire investigations. It buys outcomes. She opened the car door. Holloway's already gone. The money's already moved. You stopped nothing. All you did was delay the inevitable. I'll find him, Maya said. I'll find all of you." Mitchell smiled. It was the smile of someone who had already won. "No, you won't." She got in the car. The engine roared to life. Maya stood on the sidewalk watching the sedan disappear into traffic, watching months of work evaporate, watching a traitor escape in broad daylight. Then she pulled out her phone. "This is Special Agent Chen. I need an APB on Agent Sarah Mitchell. She's a federal fugitive, armed and dangerous. I also need a team at Richard Holloway's last known location. And someone get me the director's office on the line." She paused. "And release Marcus Cole from custody. He's not our leak." In the holding cell, Cole heard the door unlock. He looked up to see Maya Chen standing in the doorway, her face streaked with sweat, her breathing heavy, her eyes blazing with something he couldn't quite identify. "You were right," she said. "Mitchell was the leak. She just ran." Cole stood slowly. "What happens now?" "Now we find her. We find Holloway. We find all of them." She stepped closer. "I owe you an apology, Detective. I assumed you were the traitor because it was convenient, because you fit the profile, because I was angry about what you did to me, and that anger clouded my judgment." Cole shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. I took their money. I compromised myself. Everything that's happening to me right now, I earned it." "Maybe. But you didn't earn being framed for something you didn't do." She held out her hand. "I'm not saying I forgive you for what happened in the operations room. I'm not saying we're friends. But I'm saying that I was wrong about you and I want to make it right." Cole looked at her hand, then at her face. For 22 years he had built his identity around power, around dominance, around being the one who controlled the narrative. Now he was standing in a jail cell accepting help from the woman he had shoved less than 48 hours ago. He took her hand. "What do you need me to do?" Maya's grip was firm, stronger than he expected. "Tell me everything you know about Pacific Meridian, every meeting, every conversation, every detail you remember from the 18 months you were on their payroll." "That could take hours." "Then we'd better get started." She turned toward the door. "Agent Chen." She stopped. "Why?" Cole's voice was rough. "Why are you giving me a chance after everything I did?" Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone gave me a chance once," she said finally. "When I was young and stupid and made a mistake that should have ended my career, a senior agent looked at me and saw potential instead of failure. He invested in my rehabilitation instead of my destruction." She turned to face Cole. "I'm not doing this because I like you, Detective. I'm doing it because I believe people can change, and because destroying someone is easy. Rebuilding them is the hard part." She walked out of the cell. Cole followed her. And somewhere in the chaos of the next few hours, something fundamental shifted between them. Not friendship, not forgiveness, but something that might eventually become both. The hunt for Mitchell and Holloway had begun. Cole talked for 6 hours straight. He sat across from Maya in a secure conference room, his voice hoarse, his eyes red from exhaustion, spilling everything he had kept buried for 18 months. The meetings, the coded messages, the offshore account where the money appeared every 3 months like clockwork. Maya listened without interrupting. She recorded every word. She watched his face for any sign of deception. She found none. "Mitchell approached me at a bar," Cole said, rubbing his temples. 8 months before the task force was even formed. She said she was with private security, said she had clients who needed someone inside LAPD who could provide advance warning on certain investigations. And you said yes. I said no." Cole's laugh was bitter. 3 times. She kept coming back, kept raising the offer. 50,000 became 100. 100 became 150. He looked at Maya with something close to shame. My ex-wife has MS. The treatments aren't covered by insurance. She was drowning in medical debt. Our daughter was about to start college. I told myself it was just information. I told myself I wasn't hurting anyone. What did you give them? Nothing. Cole's voice cracked. That's the thing. I took their money, but I never gave them anything useful. Every time Mitchell asked for something specific, I found an excuse. Delay after delay. I was stringing them along, taking their money, convinced I could keep doing it forever without actually betraying anyone. Maya studied him. Why should I believe that? Because if I had been feeding them real information, Holloway would have run months ago. The fact that he stayed until 2 days ago means he didn't know how close you were. And if Mitchell had been getting what she needed from me, she wouldn't have needed to do her own digging. It made sense. Maya hated that it made sense. The financial deposits, she said. They're going to destroy your career, whether you leaked information or not. I know. You'll probably face criminal charges. I know that too. Cole leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his hands clasped in front of him. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Agent Chen. I made choices, bad choices. I compromised myself for money, and whatever happens to me now, I've earned it. But Mitchell is still out there. Holloway is still out there. And I know things about their operation that might help you catch them. Maya was quiet for a long moment. What kind of things? Mitchell mentioned a backup location once, a place Holloway would go if everything fell apart. She called it the lighthouse. A lighthouse? I don't think she meant it literally. It was a code word. But she said it was somewhere on the coast, somewhere that couldn't be traced to him directly, somewhere he'd built up over years as an escape route. Maya's mind was already racing. Did she say anything else? Anything specific? She said it had a view of the water. She said Holloway loved watching the boats come in. It wasn't much, but it was something. Maya stood. Stay here. I'll have someone bring you food and water. We're not done. She was at the door when Cole spoke again. Agent Chen, she turned. The way I treated you in that operations room, the things I said, the things I did. He swallowed hard. I've been thinking about it for 2 days straight, and I still can't explain why I did it. I saw a young woman in casual clothes and something inside me just snapped, like I had to prove I was bigger, more important, more powerful. His voice dropped. I've been doing that my whole career, finding people I thought were weaker than me and making sure they knew their place. I told myself it was leadership. I told myself I was maintaining order, but it wasn't leadership. It was cruelty, and I didn't even see it until you stood there and refused to break. Maya didn't respond immediately. Her hand rested on the door handle. When this is over, she said finally, we'll talk about what comes next for you. But right now I need to find Mitchell, and you need to keep remembering. She walked out. Santos met her in the hallway. We traced the sedan Mitchell used, he said, practically bouncing with nervous energy. It was a rental, picked up 2 weeks ago from a company in Pasadena. The credit card used was linked to a shell company called Coastal Investments. Coastal, Maya repeated. As in coastline, as in lighthouse. Santos blinked. What? Cole mentioned a backup location, something Holloway called the lighthouse, a place on the coast where he could watch boats. That's pretty vague. Cross-reference Coastal Investments with any property acquisitions along the California coastline. Look for anything purchased in the last 5 years that might fit the description. Santos nodded and hurried away. Maya walked to the operations room where the remaining team was working in tense silence. Torres looked up as she entered. Any word on Mitchell? Not yet, but we might have a lead on Holloway's location. Torres's eyebrows rose. From Cole, he's cooperating. You trust him? Maya considered the question. I trust that he wants to make this right. Whether that's the same as trust, I don't know yet. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The lighthouse has a keeper. The keeper has a secret. Look at Mitchell's sister. Maya stared at the screen. Jennifer Holloway again. The wife who had started all of this by turning on her husband. Torres, pull everything we have on Sarah Mitchell's family, specifically any siblings. What are we looking for? I don't know yet, but someone keeps feeding us information and they want us to find something. 20 minutes later, Torres had an answer. Mitchell has a sister, she said, laying a file on Maya's desk. Dr. Rebecca Mitchell, oncologist at UCLA Medical Center. Divorced, no kids, lives alone in Santa Monica. What's her connection to Holloway? On the surface, nothing. But I dug deeper. Torres flipped to a second page. 3 years ago, Dr. Mitchell treated a patient named Elizabeth Holloway, Richard Holloway's mother. Terminal cancer. Dr. Mitchell was her primary physician for the last 6 months of her life. Maya felt the pieces clicking into place. That's how they met. Mitchell approached her sister through the mother's treatment. It gets better. After Elizabeth Holloway died, there was a substantial donation to UCLA Medical Center from an anonymous donor. The amount matched exactly what we found in Sarah Mitchell's offshore accounts. They bought her. They bought the doctor to get to the federal agent. Torres nodded grimly. Rebecca Mitchell is the connection. She's how Sarah got pulled into Holloway's orbit in the first place. Maya grabbed her jacket. Where does Rebecca Mitchell live? Santa Monica. I'll send you the address. No, you stay here and coordinate with Santos. If he finds anything on coastal investments, I need to know immediately. You're going alone. I'm going to have a conversation with a doctor about her sister's choices. That's not a tactical operation. Torres hesitated. Maya, if Mitchell is in contact with her sister, if she's hiding there, then I'll call for backup. But right now we're running out of time. Holloway gets further away with every hour that passes. She was out the door before Torres could argue further. The drive to Santa Monica took 45 minutes in traffic. Maya used the time to review everything she knew about Rebecca Mitchell. Successful oncologist, respected in her field, no criminal history, no red flags, just a woman who had apparently been manipulated into helping her sister betray everything she was supposed to stand for. Maya pulled up to a modest house 2 blocks from the beach. The lights were on. A car sat in the driveway. She approached the door and knocked. Silence. She knocked again. Dr. Mitchell, FBI. I need to speak with you. A long pause. Then footsteps. Then the door opened slowly. Rebecca Mitchell looked like a woman who hadn't slept in days. Her hair was unwashed. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her eyes were red from crying. I wondered when you'd come, she said quietly. Maya studied her face. May I come in? Rebecca stepped aside. The house was neat but impersonal. Medical journals stacked on a coffee table. A single photograph on the mantel, 2 young women arms around each other, smiling at the camera. That was taken 15 years ago, Rebecca said, noticing Maya's gaze. Before Sarah joined the bureau. Before everything went wrong. You know why I'm here. I know my sister is a fugitive. I know she's been working with criminals. I know everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. Rebecca sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. She came to me 3 years ago, she continued. After Elizabeth Holloway died, Sarah said she had a way to help me. She said there were people who wanted to support my research fund, my work, make sure I could help more patients. All I had to do was look the other way sometimes, provide information occasionally, nothing major. What kind of information? Patient records, research data, things that could be used to manipulate pharmaceutical stocks. Rebecca's voice cracked. I told myself it was victimless. I told myself the money was going to help people. But I knew. Deep down, I knew it was wrong. Maya sat across from her. Where is your sister now? I don't know. She called me yesterday morning, said she had to disappear, said I should pretend I never knew anything about any of it. Rebecca laughed bitterly. As if that's possible. As if I can just forget 3 years of compromising everything I believed in. Dr. Mitchell, I need you to think carefully. Did Sarah ever mention a place called the Lighthouse? Or anything about a location on the coast where Holloway might go? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Once, she finally said. About a year ago. Sarah was drinking, and she got careless. She mentioned that Holloway had a place in Monterey, a house on the cliffs. She said it was his insurance policy. Insurance against what? Against everyone. Against his partners. Against the government. She said he had proof there, documentation of every person he'd ever paid off, every politician, every federal agent. Maya's blood ran cold. Including Sarah. Including everyone. Sarah said if he ever went down, he was taking the whole world with him. Maya stood abruptly. I need to make a call. She stepped outside and dialed Torres. It's Monterey. Holloway has a property there somewhere on the cliffs. He's got documentation of every corrupt official he's ever dealt with. That's his leverage. That's why Mitchell ran. She knows that if Holloway releases that information, she's finished. Monterey's a big area. Any specifics? No. But Rebecca said it was on the cliffs, with a view of boats, cross-reference with the coastal investment search. Santos found something 20 minutes ago. A property in Carmel by the Sea, purchased 6 years ago through a series of shell companies, including Coastal Investments. It's a clifftop estate with direct ocean access. Maya's heart pounded. That's it. That's the lighthouse. Maya, we need a tactical team. If Holloway is there with documentation of corrupt federal officials. I know. Call Thornton. Get authorization. I'm heading to Monterey now. That's a 2-hour drive. Wait for the team. Every hour we wait is another hour for Holloway to destroy evidence or disappear completely. I'll surveil the property until backup arrives. I won't engage. Torres hesitated. Promise me. I promise. Maya hung up and walked back to the house. Rebecca was standing in the doorway. Did I help? She asked. Her voice was small, broken. You did. Maya paused. Dr. Mitchell, there are going to be consequences for what you've been involved in. I can't protect you from that. But if you cooperate fully, if you testify against your sister and Holloway, it will matter. Rebecca nodded slowly. I've spent 3 years destroying everything I worked for. Maybe it's time to start rebuilding. Maybe it is. Maya walked to her car, then stopped. Dr. Mitchell, one more question. Rebecca waited. Jennifer Holloway has been sending me information. Anonymous tips that have broken this case wide open. Do you have any idea why she would turn on her husband? Rebecca's expression shifted. Something dark passed across her face. Elizabeth Holloway, she said quietly. Richard's mother. Do you know how she died? Cancer. You treated her. I treated her for cancer, yes, but that's not what killed her. Rebecca took a shaky breath. Richard accelerated her decline, changed her medication, made sure she died faster than she should have. I didn't realize it until months later when I reviewed her charts. By then it was too late to prove anything. Maya felt sick. He killed his own mother. For the inheritance. Elizabeth was holding up a major transaction. She controlled the family trust. With her gone, Richard had full access to everything. And Jennifer found out. Jennifer found out. and she's been waiting 3 years for the right moment to destroy him. Maya understood now. This wasn't just about money or corruption or federal investigations. This was about a woman who had watched her husband murder his mother and had been planning her revenge ever since. "Thank you, Dr. Mitchell." Maya got in her car and drove. The coastal highway stretched before her, winding through hills and cliffs and ocean views she barely noticed. Her mind was focused on what lay ahead. Holloway. Mitchell. $12 billion. And documentation that could bring down an empire of corruption. Her phone buzzed. A text from Santos. "Cole has more information. He remembered something about the property. There's a hidden entrance, a tunnel from the beach to the main house. Mitchell mentioned it once." Maya forwarded the information to Torres. Then she pushed the accelerator harder. 2 hours later, she pulled off the highway onto a narrow road that wound up into the cliffs. The ocean spread out below her, gray and endless, under a sky heavy with clouds. The property was at the end of the road. A massive estate surrounded by walls and gates and security cameras. Maya parked half a mile away and approached on foot. The house was quiet. No visible movement. No signs of life. But there were vehicles in the driveway. 3 of them, including a black sedan that matched the description of Mitchell's getaway car. Maya crouched behind a rocky outcropping and pulled out her phone. "Torres, I'm at the property. Mitchell is here. I count 3 vehicles. No visual on Holloway yet. The tactical team is 90 minutes out. Hold your position." "Copy that." Maya settled in to wait. 30 minutes passed, then 40. The sun began to drop toward the horizon, painting the ocean gold and crimson. And then she saw her. Mitchell emerged from the house, walking quickly toward the cars. She was carrying a briefcase. Her movements were hurried, almost frantic. She was running again. Maya made a split-second decision. She couldn't let Mitchell escape with whatever was in that briefcase. If it contained Holloway's documentation, the proof of every corrupt official he'd ever bought, losing it could set the investigation back years. She broke cover and sprinted toward the driveway. "Mitchell, FBI, stop!" Mitchell's head snapped toward her. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met. Then Mitchell ran. She abandoned the car and sprinted toward the edge of the property, toward a narrow path that led down the cliffs to the beach below. Maya followed. The path was treacherous. Loose rocks and steep drops and the constant roar of waves crashing against the rocks below. Maya's lungs burned as she descended, her eyes fixed on Mitchell's retreating figure. "There's nowhere to go, Mitchell. Give it up." Mitchell didn't respond. She reached a rocky platform halfway down the cliff and turned the briefcase clutched to her chest. "Stay back." Her voice was raw, desperate. "I will throw this over the edge. Everything Holloway has on everyone. Gone. Is that what you want?" Maya stopped 10 feet away. Her hand rested on her weapon, but she didn't draw it. "What I want is for you to face justice. What I want is for Holloway to face justice. What I want is for the families who lost everything to his fraud to see some measure of accountability." "What justice?" Mitchell laughed. It was an ugly sound torn from somewhere deep and broken. "You think justice exists. You think the system actually works. Holloway bought half of Congress. He bought federal judges. He bought people in every agency that was supposed to stop him. The system is broken. Agent Chen, I just figured out how to survive in it. By betraying everything you swore to protect, by accepting reality." Mitchell's eyes were wild. "You think you're different? You think your integrity means something? Give it time." Give it 20 years of watching criminals walk free and corrupt politicians get promoted. Give it 20 years of seeing the people who play by the rules get crushed, while the people who cheat get everything. I'm not you. Not yet. They stood facing each other on the narrow ledge, the ocean crashing below, the wind howling around them. Mitchell, I'm asking you one more time. Put down the briefcase. And if I don't, you'll shoot me. You'll watch me fall off this cliff and call it justice. Maya's hand moved away from her weapon. She took a step forward. I'm not going to shoot you, and I'm not going to let you fall. Mitchell stared at her. Why? Because destroying people is easy, and I'm not interested in easy. For a long moment, nothing happened. The waves crashed. The wind blew. Two women stood on the edge of a cliff separated by 10 feet and a lifetime of different choices. Then Mitchell's shoulders slumped. The briefcase dropped to the rocks at her feet. I'm tired, she whispered. I'm so tired of all of it. Maya moved forward and picked up the briefcase. Then she stood next to Mitchell, looking out at the ocean. When I was 22, Maya said quietly, I made a mistake that should have ended my career. I accessed files I wasn't authorized to see. I was trying to help someone, but that didn't matter. Rules are rules. Mitchell turned to look at her. A senior agent caught me. He could have destroyed me. He had every reason to. But instead he sat me down and asked me why I did it. And when I told him, he said something I've never forgotten. What? He said, the measure of a person isn't whether they make mistakes. It's what they do after. Maya turned to face Mitchell. You made choices. Bad choices. And there are going to be consequences. But consequences don't have to mean destruction. They can mean a chance to become something different. Mitchell's eyes filled with tears. I don't know if I can be different. Neither do I, but I'm willing to find out. The sound of helicopters appeared in the distance, growing louder. The tactical team was arriving. Maya took Mitchell's arm gently. Come on, let's go back up. They climbed the path together slowly, carefully, the briefcase secure in Maya's grip. And somewhere in the house above them, Richard Holloway was about to learn that his empire had finally fallen. The tactical team surrounded the estate within minutes. Maya watched from the clifftop as agents in black tactical gear breached every entrance simultaneously. The sound of shattering glass and shouted commands echoed across the property. Mitchell sat handcuffed in the back of an FBI vehicle, her face blank, her eyes staring at nothing. Torres approached Maya at a run. We've got him. Holloway was in the basement trying to destroy documents. He didn't get far. Maya nodded, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The briefcase Mitchell was carrying. I need it processed immediately. Full inventory of every document. Already on it. Torres hesitated. Maya, the director, is on the line. He wants to speak with you personally. Tell him I'll call back in 10 minutes. First, I need to see Holloway. She walked toward the house, her legs heavy, her mind racing. 3 days. It had been 3 days since Cole shoved her in that operations room. 3 days since her world had exploded into chaos and betrayal and revelations she never expected. And now, it was ending. Holloway was in the main living room surrounded by 4 agents, his hands cuffed behind his back. He was older than his photographs suggested, late 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, now wrinkled and disheveled. He looked like a man who had finally run out of options. His eyes found Maya as she entered. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation. Special Agent Chen, he said. His voice was calm, too calm. I've heard about you. The youngest special agent in charge in bureau history. Quite an achievement for someone your age. Richard Holloway, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, bribery of federal officials, and obstruction of justice. Additional charges are pending. Of course they are, Holloway smiled. It was a thin, reptilian expression that didn't reach his eyes. Do you know how many times I've been investigated, Agent Chen 7? 7 separate federal investigations over 20 years. And do you know how many resulted in charges? Maya didn't answer. 0. Not a single one. Because I understand how the system works. I understand that everyone has a price. I understand that leverage is the only currency that truly matters. He leaned forward slightly, despite the agents holding him. You think this is over? You think arresting me changes anything? The people I work with, the people who depend on me, they're not going to let this stand. They're going to make calls. They're going to apply pressure. And in 6 months, maybe a year, I'll walk out of whatever facility you put me in, and everything will go back to exactly the way it was. Maya stepped closer to him. Her voice was quiet, but carried an edge that made the surrounding agents shift uncomfortably. Your wife gave us everything. Holloway's smile faltered. Jennifer, your wife of 23 years. The woman who watched you murder your mother to get access to the family trust. The woman who has spent 3 years documenting every crime you've ever committed. The color drained from Holloway's face. She didn't just give us financial records, Mr. Holloway. She gave us recordings. Conversations you had in your home office when you thought no one was listening. Conversations about bribing federal judges. Conversations about eliminating witnesses. Conversations about what you did to Elizabeth. Holloway's composure shattered. That's impossible. Jennifer would never... Jennifer has been working with us for 6 months. Every anonymous tip we received came from her. Every piece of evidence that broke this case open came from her. She's been dismantling your empire from the inside while you were too arrogant to notice. Maya leaned in close enough that only Holloway could hear her next words. You thought you were untouchable. You thought your money and your connections would protect you forever. But you forgot the most basic rule of power, Mr. Holloway. The people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you most. She straightened up. Take him. The agents led Holloway toward the door. His legs seemed to have trouble supporting him. The confidence that had radiated from him moments ago had evaporated, replaced by the dawning realization that his world had truly ended. Maya watched him go. Then she pulled out her phone and called the director. The next 72 hours were a blur of interrogations, evidence processing, and coordinated arrests across 3 states. The documents in Mitchell's briefcase were exactly what Rebecca had described: comprehensive records of every corrupt official Holloway had ever purchased. 12 senators, 47 representatives, 8 federal judges, dozens of law enforcement officials at every level. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Resignations began within hours of the first leaks. Politicians who had spent decades building careers watched those careers crumble overnight. News networks ran continuous coverage. The president issued a statement calling for accountability. And at the center of it all, Maya Chen coordinated the response with a precision that impressed even the most veteran agents in the Bureau. On the 4th day, she finally allowed herself to sleep. When she woke 12 hours later, there was a message on her phone from an unexpected source. Agent Chen, this is Marcus Cole. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I have something I need to say, and I'd rather say it in person. I'm at the coffee shop on 3rd Street, if you have time. Maya stared at the message for a long moment. Then she got dressed and drove to 3rd Street. Cole was sitting in a corner booth, a cup of coffee untouched in front of him. He looked different. Smaller, somehow. The arrogance that had defined him in the operations room was gone, replaced by something that might have been humility. Maya slid into the seat across from him. You look terrible, she said. Cole almost smiled. I haven't been sleeping much. Neither have I. They sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Morning light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the table. "I wanted to thank you," Cole finally said, "for not giving up on me when you had every reason to, for believing me when I told you about Mitchell." "I didn't believe you. I verified what you told me. Same thing in the end." He took a breath. "I also wanted to tell you what's happening with my case." Maya waited. "The LAPD is conducting its own investigation into the payments I received. They're recommending termination. I'll probably face criminal charges for accepting bribes, even though I never actually gave them anything useful." "That's probably fair." "It is fair." Cole's voice was steady. "I compromised myself. I took money from criminals. I don't deserve to wear a badge anymore." He looked at her directly. "But here's the thing. I've been thinking about what you said, about destruction being easy, about rebuilding being hard, and I realized that you were right." Maya tilted her head slightly. "Right about what?" "I spent 22 years confusing authority with leadership. I thought being in charge meant being in control. I thought respect was something you demanded rather than something you earned. I thought the badge gave me the right to treat people however I wanted." His hands wrapped around his coffee cup, though he still hadn't taken a drink. "That woman in the operations room, the one I shoved, the one I called names, she stood there and took everything I threw at her, and she never broke. She never raised her voice. She never lost her composure. And in the end, she was right about everything, and I was wrong about everything." "I was terrified," Maya said quietly. Cole looked up, surprised. "When you grabbed my arm, when you shoved me, I was terrified. I just didn't let you see it." "Why not?" "Because showing fear to a bully only makes them worse. And because I knew that if I stood my ground long enough, the truth would come out. It always does." Cole nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about all the people I've treated the way I treated you. All the civilians, all the junior officers, all the people I decided were beneath me because they didn't have my rank, or my experience, or my connections." His voice cracked slightly. "How many of them went home feeling the way you felt? How many of them decided they couldn't handle a career in law enforcement because of people like me? How many careers did I destroy without even realizing it?" Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to. The question was rhetorical, and they both knew the answer was too many. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. Cole was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. For the first time in my life, I don't have a plan. I don't have a title. I don't have authority. I'm just a guy who made terrible choices and is trying to figure out how to live with the consequences." He finally took a sip of his coffee. It was cold. He didn't seem to notice. "But I think that's okay. I think maybe I needed to lose everything to finally understand what actually matters. Leadership isn't about power. It isn't about making people afraid of you. It's about making people better than they were before they met you." He looked at Maya. "You did that. In 3 days, you showed me more about real leadership than I learned in 22 years on the force. And I wanted you to know that I see it now, even if it's too late to change anything." Maya was silent for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card. "There's an organization," she said. "A non-profit that works with at-risk youth. They're looking for mentors. People who can help young people understand that making mistakes doesn't have to define your entire life." Cole took the card. His hand was trembling. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because you're right. Destruction is easy, and I'm not interested in easy." She stood up. "You have knowledge, Cole. Experience. Stories about what happens when you let ambition and ego corrupt everything good about you. That knowledge could help someone else avoid the same path." Cole stared at the card. "I'm not saying I forgive you," Maya continued. "I'm not saying we're friends. I'm not saying the consequences of your choices should be reduced or eliminated, but I am saying that what you do with the rest of your life matters more than what you did before. She walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing, Cole looked up. The next time you see someone who looks young or inexperienced or out of place, the next time you're tempted to assume someone doesn't belong based on how they look, remember this moment. Remember what assumptions cost you. She left. Cole sat alone in the coffee shop, turning the business card over and over in his hands. Outside, the sun continued to rise. Traffic began to build on the street. The world kept moving indifferent to his crisis of conscience. But something had shifted inside him. Something fundamental and permanent. For the first time in 22 years, Marcus Cole was thinking about someone other than himself. 6 months later. Maya stood at a podium in the FBI's Los Angeles field office, facing a room full of reporters and cameras. Behind her, a banner displayed the results of Operation Blackstone, $11.7 billion recovered. 43 criminal convictions, 17 corrupt officials removed from office. This investigation, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, represents more than just the successful prosecution of financial crimes. It represents a commitment to accountability at every level of our institutions. She paused, letting the words settle. We have learned that corruption doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a sign. It hides behind titles and credentials, and the assumption that power makes people trustworthy. Our job, the job of every law enforcement professional in this country, is to challenge those assumptions, to hold everyone to the same standard regardless of their rank or their connections. Her eyes swept the room. I want to thank every agent and officer who worked on this case. Their dedication and integrity made this outcome possible. And I want to send a message to anyone who believes they are above the law. You are not. No amount of money, no amount of influence, no amount of power will protect you from accountability. Where questions erupted from the press corps, Maya answered them calmly, professionally, with the quiet confidence that had defined her from the beginning. After the press conference, Assistant Director Thornton found her in her office. The director was impressed, he said. Very impressed. Maya nodded, not looking up from her paperwork. Good. He's talking about a promotion. Deputy Director Track. Youngest in Bureau history, obviously. Obviously. Thornton studied her for a moment. You don't seem excited. Maya finally looked up. I'm proud of what we accomplished. But I'm also tired, and I'm thinking about something someone said to me a few weeks ago. What's that? That the measure of a person isn't whether they make mistakes. It's what they do after. Thornton was quiet. We caught Holloway. We exposed Mitchell. We recovered most of the money. But we also had a federal agent who was corrupted right under our noses. We had a system that allowed someone like her to operate for years without detection. That's not success. That's a warning. She stood up and walked to the window. The next Holloway is already out there. The next Mitchell is already being recruited. And unless we do something about the conditions that create corruption in the first place, the pressure, the cynicism, the belief that the system is rigged, we're just going to keep playing whack-a-mole with criminals who are always one step ahead. So, what do you want to do about it? Maya turned to face him. I want to build something. A training program. A mentorship system. Something that helps agents recognize the early signs of corruption in themselves and in others. Something that reminds people why they joined law enforcement in the first place. Thornton considered this. That's not exactly the deputy director track. No, it isn't. It might be considered a step backward, career-wise. Probably. The director isn't going to be happy. The director wants results. Building agents who don't get corrupted produces better long-term results than catching them after they've already done the damage. Thornton smiled slowly. You've thought about this? I've done nothing but think about it for 6 months. He nodded. I'll talk to the director. No promises. Thank you, sir. Thornton walked to the door, then paused. Agent Chen, for what it's worth, I think you're exactly the kind of leader this bureau needs. Not because you're smart or capable, although you're both, but because you understand that leadership isn't about climbing ladders. It's about building people. He left. Maya stood alone in her office, looking out at the city she had sworn to protect. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere out there, the next crisis was already brewing. The next test was already forming. But she was ready. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Agent Chen, I started volunteering with that organization you mentioned. First session with at-risk youth is tomorrow. I'm terrified, but I think that's probably a good thing. MC. Maya smiled. She typed back a single word, good. Then she gathered her things and walked out of the office. The investigation was over. The convictions were secured. The headlines would fade. But the real work, the work of building a system that didn't create Holloways and Mitchells and Coles in the first place, that work was just beginning. And Maya Chen was exactly where she needed to be to do it. 2 years later. The FBI Academy at Quantico buzzed with the energy of a new graduating class. 200 fresh agents sat in crisp suits, their faces bright with anticipation, their futures stretching out before them like uncharted territory. Maya stood at the podium looking out at them. She wore her formal uniform, now the medals and ribbons accumulated over a decade of service, gleaming under the auditorium lights. Today, she began, you become federal agents. You receive credentials that give you extraordinary power. Power to investigate. Power to arrest. Power to change lives. She paused. I want to tell you a story about a day that almost ended my career before it truly began. The room went still. I was 24 years old. I walked into a room full of experienced officers. I was wearing civilian clothes. I looked young. I looked inexperienced. I looked like someone who didn't belong. Her voice carried clearly through the silence. A senior detective decided I was a target. He shoved me. He called me names. He tried to have me removed from the building. He assumed, based on nothing but my appearance, that I had no right to be there. She let the words settle. He was wrong. But here's the thing. If I had been the intern, he assumed his behavior would have been just as wrong. The problem wasn't that he misjudged my rank. The problem was that he believed rank entitled him to treat people with contempt. She looked at each row of fresh faces in turn. You will face moments like that. Moments when you have power over someone who cannot fight back. Moments when no one is watching. Moments when the easy choice is to assert dominance rather than extend respect. Her voice hardened. Those moments will define you more than any case you solve or any criminal you catch. Because anyone can be strong when they're holding all the cards. True strength is treating people with dignity when you have every opportunity not to. She straightened her shoulders. I learned that lesson from a detective who destroyed his career by making the wrong choice. And I learned it from an agent who threw away everything she believed in because she stopped caring about right and wrong. I learned it from watching corruption eat through institutions that were supposed to protect the innocent. She leaned forward slightly. You have a choice. Every day, every interaction, every moment. You can be the kind of agent who makes people believe in justice, or you can be the kind who makes them give up on it. Her final words rang through the auditorium. Choose wisely. The institution you're joining depends on it. The people you're sworn to protect depend on it. And the person you'll see in the mirror for the rest of your life depends on it. The applause started slowly, then built to a crescendo. Maya stepped back from the podium. In the audience, a man in his late 40s sat among the families and guests. His hair was grayer than it used to be. His face carried lines that hadn't been there 2 years ago. But his eyes were clear, and when they met Maya's across the crowded room, they held something that looked like gratitude. Marcus Cole had been invited to attend the graduation as part of the mentorship program Maya had built. He worked with at-risk youth now. He spoke at high schools about accountability and choices and what happens when good people lose their way. He wasn't the man he used to be. Neither was Maya. And maybe that was the point. The world didn't change through grand gestures or dramatic revelations. It changed through countless small choices made by countless ordinary people every single day. It changed when someone chose respect over contempt, when someone chose truth over convenience, when someone chose to rebuild rather than destroy. Maya walked through the crowd of new agents and proud families. She shook hands. She accepted congratulations. She smiled for photographs. But her mind was already on the next challenge, the next crisis, the next opportunity to make a difference. Because that was what leadership meant. Not the rank on your collar, not the title on your door, not the power you held over others. Leadership was the choice to lift people up instead of pushing them down. The choice to invest in someone's potential instead of exploiting their weakness. The choice to be better today than you were yesterday and to help others do the same. Maya Chen had learned that lesson in the hardest way possible, and she would spend the rest of her career making sure no one ever had to learn it the way she did. Because true strength was never about dominance. It was about what you chose to do with your power when no one was watching. And that choice defined everything.